I'm Maya Thompson, and I'm 30 years old. My father called me the family shame for delivering packages in a bright yellow uniform. He said those exact words at my cousin's wedding reception, loud enough for 3 tables to hear. I set down my champagne glass, looked him straight in the eye, and walked out without saying a word. 2 years later, he walked into my boardroom begging for a job. He had no idea who owned the company. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely dismissed by someone who should love you unconditionally. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me take you back to how this all started. It was April 2022, and I was 28, living in my childhood bedroom in Portland, Oregon, after getting laid off from my marketing job. The tech startup I'd worked for went under faster than a lead balloon. My savings were gone, my student loans were breathing down my neck, and my father made it clear daily that I was a disappointment. "Maya, you can't keep living here indefinitely," he announced over breakfast one Tuesday morning. "Your mother and I need our space back." He folded his newspaper with that crisp snap that meant business. "Maybe it's time you considered something more practical." By practical, he meant married. My younger brother Jake had just gotten engaged to his college sweetheart, and suddenly, I was the family's cautionary tale. Never mind that I'd graduated cum laude from Oregon State with a marketing degree. Never mind that I'd been supporting myself since graduation. One bad break, and I was back to being treated like a wayward teenager. "I'm trying, Dad," I said, scrolling through job listings on my laptop. "The market is brutal right now." "When I was your age, I took whatever work I could find," he replied, not looking up from his coffee. Pride doesn't pay bills, Maya. The irony of that statement would come back to haunt him, but I didn't know it yet. That afternoon, desperate to get out of the house and away from his disapproving sighs, I walked to the local coffee shop where I'd been basically living, trying to network and apply for jobs. That's where I saw the hiring sign in the window of Quick Rush Delivery. They were looking for drivers, immediate start, good pay. The uniform was that bright yellow I'd later become famous for wearing, but the money was decent, and they offered flexible hours so I could keep job hunting. I walked in and filled out the application right there. The manager, Sandra, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who looked me over and said, "College graduate, huh? What's your story?" "Just need something while I find my next career move," I explained, trying to sound professional despite applying for a delivery job in yoga pants and a coffee-stained sweater. "Honey, let me tell you something," Sandra said, leaning across her cluttered desk. "There's no shame in honest work. I've seen plenty of college kids come through here thinking they're too good for this job. The ones who succeed are the ones who treat it with respect." Those words stuck with me. Sandra hired me on the spot, and I started the next Monday. The work was physical, driving all over Portland, delivering everything from documents to restaurant orders to medical supplies. But I was good at it. I learned the city inside and out, developed relationships with regular customers, and started to see patterns in the delivery business that others missed. My father's reaction when I came home in the uniform was swift and cutting. "This is what your college education got you?" he asked, looking at me like I was wearing a scarlet letter. "Delivering other people's takeout?" My mother tried to be supportive, in her own way. "It's temporary, sweetheart," she'd whisper when Dad wasn't around. "Just until something better comes along." But even she seemed embarrassed when her bridge club friends asked about my job. I could see her deflecting, changing the subject, making excuses for her daughter, the delivery driver. The worst part wasn't the uniform or the physical work. It was the way my family started treating me like I'd given up on life. Sunday dinners became exercises in passive-aggressive commentary. Jake would talk about his promotion at the engineering firm, while Dad nodded approvingly. My cousin Rachel would update everyone on her law school applications, while Mom beamed with vicarious pride. Then they'd turn to me. "How's the driving going, Maya?" Dad would ask, emphasizing driving like it was a communicable disease. "It's honest work," I'd reply, borrowing Sandra's phrase. "I'm learning a lot about business operations." This would earn me patient smiles and quick subject changes. They thought I was delusional, telling myself stories to feel better about my circumstances. Maybe that's what made my cousin's wedding reception the breaking point. It was a beautiful October evening at the Columbia River Gorge. Rachel had married her law school boyfriend in a ceremony that cost more than my annual salary. I'd taken the day off from Quick Rush, bought a nice dress, and actually looked forward to a family gathering where maybe I could just be Maya, not Maya, the disappointment. I should have known better. The reception was in full swing when I found myself standing near the bar with Dad, Jake, and a group of Dad's business associates. They were discussing their various success stories, the kind of networking conversation that happens at every wedding. Someone mentioned their son who'd just started at Nike's headquarters. "Robert, How are your kids doing? Asked Mr. Peterson, one of Dad's golf buddies. Jake's in engineering, right? What about Maya? I held my breath, hoping for once Dad would just say I was in logistics or transportation. Something neutral that wouldn't require explanation. Instead, he took a long sip of his whiskey and said, Maya's finding her way. She's delivering packages right now. The way he said it made it sound like a medical condition. Mr. Peterson, trying to be polite, said, Oh, like UPS? That's good work. And that's when my father, slightly drunk and apparently feeling the need to establish that this wasn't a career track position, delivered the line that changed everything. Not UPS. She drives around in a yellow uniform, delivering takeout and packages for minimum wage. It's become the family shame. Really? The conversation stopped. 6 men in expensive suits stared at me. Some embarrassed for my father, others embarrassed for me. Jake shifted uncomfortably beside me, but I felt something inside me crystallize, something hard and determined that hadn't been there before. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell or cry or throw my drink in his face, though the thought crossed my mind. Instead, I set down my champagne glass on the nearest table, looked my father directly in the eye, and said in a voice steady as granite, Excuse me. Then I walked out of that reception with my head held high, leaving behind a table of uncomfortable men and a father who probably thought he'd finally motivated me to get serious about my career. He had no idea how right he was, just not in the way he expected. The drive home in my beat-up Honda gave me time to think. By the time I reached my apartment, something had shifted inside me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was determined. If delivering packages was so beneath the Thompson family standards, maybe it was time to stop being an employee and start being an employer. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's cruelty accidentally became the catalyst for your greatest success? Let me know in the comments, because that's exactly what happened next. I spent that entire weekend researching the delivery industry. What I found was fascinating. The market was exploding with online shopping growth, but most delivery services were inefficient, unreliable, or expensive. Small businesses were struggling to compete with Amazon's logistics network. There was a gap in the market for a service that could provide personalized, reliable delivery for local businesses at competitive rates. Monday morning, I called in sick to Quick Rush, and instead drove around Portland with a notebook, talking to small business owners about their delivery challenges. What I discovered was a goldmine of untapped need. Restaurant owners frustrated with third-party delivery fees, boutique retailers who couldn't afford their own delivery fleet, medical offices needing reliable courier services, pet stores wanting same-day delivery for pet supplies. By Thursday, I had 15 businesses interested in a delivery service that could offer them better rates, more reliability, and personalized customer service than the big companies. By Friday, I had a business plan sketched out and was researching small business loans. The name came to me while sitting in traffic behind a bright yellow Quick Rush van. Thompson Logistics. It sounded professional, established, serious. Nothing like the package delivery my father had dismissed so casually. I gave my 2 weeks' notice to Sandra the following Monday. She wasn't surprised. You've got entrepreneur written all over you, she said with a knowing smile. Just remember where you learned the business from the ground up when you're running $1 million company. $1 million company seemed like an impossible dream at the time. But Sandra had taught me something valuable. There's no shame in honest work, and every successful business starts with understanding the work at its most basic level. The hardest part was the initial investment. I had exactly $3,200 in savings and decent credit, but no family support. When I mentioned my business idea to my parents, hoping they might invest or at least offer encouragement, Dad's response was predictable. Maya, be realistic. You can't compete with established companies. Why don't you use this energy to find a real job instead of chasing pipe dreams? So I did what every determined entrepreneur does when family won't believe in them. I proved them wrong. I took out a small business loan using my car as collateral, bought professional-grade GPS systems, and invested in liability insurance. My first vehicle was a used Ford Transit van that I bought from a church that was upgrading their fleet. The van was white with some minor dents, but it was reliable, and it was mine. I spent a weekend painting Thompson Logistics on both sides in professional blue lettering. It looked legitimate, even if the whole company was just me and a borrowed phone number. My first client was Carmen's Cafe, a little restaurant near downtown that was losing money on delivery fees to the big apps. Carmen was skeptical until I showed her my rates and guaranteed delivery times. You're just one person, she pointed out. What happens when you get busy? Then I hire help, I replied with more confidence than I felt. But right now, You're getting the owner's personal attention for every delivery. Try me for a week. That first week, I delivered 47 orders for Carmen's Cafe, maintaining an average delivery time of 28 minutes, and earning rave reviews from customers who were surprised to have their food arrive hot and on time. Carmen was impressed enough to sign a monthly contract and recommend me to 2 other restaurant owners. Word spread quickly in Portland's tight-knit small business community. By month 3, I had contracts with 8 businesses and had hired my first employee, Marcus, a college student who needed flexible hours. By month 6, we had 3 vans and 5 part-time drivers. The breakthrough came when Dr. Patel's medical clinic needed urgent courier services for lab samples and prescriptions. Medical deliveries required special certification and insurance, but they paid premium rates. I spent 2 weeks getting certified for medical courier services, and suddenly Thompson Logistics had entered a lucrative niche market. That's when I realized we weren't just a delivery company anymore. We were a logistics solutions provider. We offered businesses customized delivery schedules, real-time tracking, special handling for fragile items, and customer service that actually answered the phone. Our rates were competitive with the big companies, but our service was personal. The day I signed my 10th contract, I celebrated by driving past my parents' house in my branded van, wondering if Dad was watching from his home office window. I hoped he was. I wanted him to see that his family's shame was building something real, but I still hadn't told my family about Thompson Logistics. As far as they knew, I was still delivering packages in a yellow uniform, because frankly, their opinion had stopped mattering to me. I was too busy building a business to worry about their approval. The first year was brutal. 18-hour days, constant problem-solving, learning about payroll and taxes and insurance regulations. I moved out of my studio apartment into a small house with a garage I could use as an office. Every dollar went back into the business, expanding our fleet, improving our technology, hiring better drivers. By year 2, Thompson Logistics had 23 employees, 12 vehicles, and contracts with over 60 businesses across the Portland metro area. We'd expanded into same-day delivery for major retailers, specialized pet supply delivery, and had a growing medical courier division that was becoming quite profitable. The real game changer came when I landed a contract with Portland General Hospital for their outpatient prescription delivery service. It was a 6-figure annual contract that required us to handle HIPAA-compliant deliveries, maintain strict chain of custody protocols, and operate 7 days a week. But it also legitimized Thompson Logistics as a serious player in the medical logistics field. I hired Jennifer Chen as my operations manager, a brilliant woman with an MBA who'd left a corporate logistics job to join our growing company. "You're building something special here," she told me during her interview. "Most delivery companies focus on volume. You've built a business around relationships and reliability." Jennifer was right. While other companies competed on price alone, we competed on service quality. Our drivers knew regular customers by name. We offered evening and weekend deliveries. We handled special requests that the big companies wouldn't touch. Our customer retention rate was 94%, unheard of in the delivery industry. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was succeeding precisely because I understood the delivery business from the ground up. Every system I designed, every process I implemented, was based on real experience dealing with frustrated customers, difficult deliveries, and the operational challenges that corporate executives never see. My personal life took a backseat to business growth, but I didn't mind. I was building something I was proud of, something that employed good people and served our community. Some nights I'd work until midnight in my home office, reviewing delivery routes and customer feedback, and feel more satisfied than I'd ever felt in any corporate job. The local business community started taking notice. I was invited to speak at the Portland Small Business Association's annual conference about logistics solutions for growing companies. Portland Business Journal profiled Thompson Logistics as one of the city's fastest-growing service businesses. I even got a congratulatory email from Sandra at Quick Rush, who'd heard about my success through industry connections. But the validation I wanted most remained elusive. My family still thought I was just a delivery driver with delusions of grandeur. Jake had been promoted to senior engineer and bought a house in the suburbs. My parents bragged about his success at every opportunity. When people asked about me, I knew they still said I was finding my way or trying different things. The breaking point came at Thanksgiving dinner that second year. Uncle Mike asked about my job, and Dad gave his standard deflection about me being in transportation. When Uncle Mike pressed for details, Mom jumped in with, "Maya's still figuring out her career path. These young people take longer to settle down these days." I realized they genuinely didn't know what I'd built. They saw the van in my driveway and assumed I was still working for someone else. They saw my work clothes and busy schedule and assumed I was struggling. They'd been so dismissive of my initial career setback that they'd stopped paying attention entirely. That Thanksgiving night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done hiding my success to protect their feelings. If they wanted to keep treating me like the family failure, they were about to get a reality check. I started with small things. New business cards that clearly identified me as CEO and founder, a professional headshot for the company website, a LinkedIn profile that detailed Thompson Logistics' growth and success. When family friends asked about my work, I started giving real answers instead of vague deflections. The first crack in their assumptions came when Mrs. Henderson from down the street mentioned seeing my company's van delivering to her daughter's medical office. "Maya, I didn't know you worked for Thompson Logistics," she said at the grocery store. "My daughter says they're the best courier service in the city." "Thanks," I replied with a smile. "I'm glad we're taking good care of her business." Mrs. Henderson looked confused. "Oh, do you know the owner? Maybe you could put in a good word for my nephew. He's looking for work." "Actually," I said, enjoying the moment, "I am the owner. Tell your nephew to apply through our website. We're always looking for reliable drivers." The look on her face was priceless. Word travels fast in suburban neighborhoods, and within a week, my parents had heard from multiple sources that their daughter owned the logistics company they'd been seeing around town. Dad called me that Friday evening. "Maya, Mrs. Henderson says you own Thompson Logistics. That can't be right." "It is right." "Dad, I've owned it for 2 years." Long pause. "But you deliver packages?" "I run a logistics company that employs 28 people and serves over 80 businesses. Sometimes I still do deliveries when we're short-staffed, because I believe in understanding every aspect of my business." Another pause. "Why didn't you tell us?" The question hung in the air between us. Why hadn't I told them? Because they'd made it clear that anything involving delivery was beneath their notice. Because they'd dismissed my work so completely that I'd stopped including them in my success. "Dad, you called my career choice the family shame. You made it clear you thought delivering packages was worthless work. I didn't think you'd be interested in hearing about a business built on that foundation." "Maya, that's not... I didn't realize you were starting a company." "Because you weren't listening," I said gently. "You were so busy being embarrassed by what I was doing that you missed what I was building." That conversation marked the beginning of a shift in our relationship. But the real test was still coming. Because 6 months later, my father's engineering firm would downsize, and he'd find himself in the job market for the first time in 25 years. And Thompson Logistics would be hiring for a senior operations consultant position that required someone with exactly his background and experience. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor about family dynamics and public humiliation. But that's a story for tomorrow. Right now, I was just savoring the moment when the family shame became the family business owner, and my father realized his daughter had been building an empire while he wasn't paying attention. 6 months after that awkward phone conversation with Dad, Thompson Logistics was experiencing the kind of growth that keeps entrepreneurs awake at night, with excitement and terror in equal measure. We'd just landed a major contract with Oregon Health Sciences University for their entire internal courier system, which meant expanding our medical division significantly. I was in my downtown office, a real office now with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River, when Jennifer knocked on my door with a concerned expression. "Maya, we need to talk about staffing," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "The OHSU contract requires us to hire someone senior to oversee medical logistics compliance. We need someone with engineering background who understands complex operational systems." "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" I asked, already mentally calculating the budget implications. "They want implementation to start in 8 weeks. We need someone who can hit the ground running, someone with 20-plus years of experience in systems management and process optimization." That's when my personal assistant, David, buzzed in. "Maya, your mother's online too. She says it's urgent." I picked up the phone, expecting another Bridge Club update or dinner invitation. Instead, Mom's voice was tight with stress. "Maya, sweetheart, I need to tell you something about your father. His company is downsizing. They're eliminating his entire department. After 25 years, they're offering him a severance package and thanking him for his service." The irony hit me like a freight train. Here I was, needing someone with exactly my father's qualifications, while he was facing unemployment for the first time since before I was born. "How's he taking it?" I asked, though I could imagine. Dad had always defined himself by his professional success. "Not well. He's been sending out resumes for 3 weeks without a single callback." "Maya, he's 57 years old. Companies want younger engineers they can pay less." He's panicking. After hanging up, I sat staring out at the river, processing the cosmic coincidence. The man who'd called my career choice shameful was about to learn what it felt like to need a job he might not be qualified for. Jennifer was still waiting for my response about the senior position. Post the job, I told her. Wide distribution. Let's see what kind of candidates we get. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for the conclusion of this incredible story. 2 weeks later, my father was discovering what the modern job market looked like for experienced professionals. Mom called me again, this time from her car in the grocery store parking lot. Maya, I'm worried about your father. He's becoming obsessed with job hunting. He's on his computer from morning until night, applying for positions, researching companies, tweaking his resume. He's applied to over 60 jobs and hasn't gotten a single interview. I could hear the frustration in her voice. Dad had always been the provider, the successful one, the person who lectured others about work ethic and practical career choices. Now he was learning that experience doesn't always translate to employment opportunities. Maybe he should consider broadening his search, I suggested carefully. Look at different types of companies, not just traditional engineering firms. He's too proud for that, Mom said. You know how he is. He keeps saying he's not going to take just any job, that he needs something that respects his experience level. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. Here was a man who'd suggested I should take whatever work I could find when I was unemployed, now refusing to consider positions he deemed beneath his qualifications. Meanwhile, at Thomson Logistics, our senior operations consultant posting was generating serious interest. Jennifer had narrowed it down to 12 qualified candidates, including some impressive resumes from experienced professionals looking for career changes. We've got some really strong applicants, she reported during our weekly meeting. Several have 20-plus years in engineering and systems management. A few are career changers looking to get into the logistics industry. Schedule first-round interviews for next week, I decided. Let's see who's genuinely interested in what we're building here. That evening, Jake called me. Maya, can I ask you a favor? Dad's really struggling with this job search. He's starting to get depressed. I was wondering if you might have any connections in the logistics industry, maybe someone who needs engineering consulting. My brother had no idea that Thomson Logistics was actively hiring for exactly the position Dad needed. The temptation to tell him was overwhelming, but something held me back. Maybe it was curiosity about whether Dad would find us on his own. Maybe it was a test of whether he'd consider working for a delivery company, even one he didn't know I owned. I'll keep my ears open, I told Jake truthfully. 3 weeks into the interview process, Jennifer brought me an interesting development. Maya, we just received a resume that's perfect for the position. 26 years of engineering experience, specializes in process optimization and systems management, currently seeking new opportunities due to corporate restructuring. She handed me the resume, and there it was. Robert Thompson, professional engineer, seeking senior operations consultant position with Thomson Logistics. My father had applied to work for my company without realizing it was my company. Looking at Dad's resume, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride, because his qualifications were genuinely impressive. Irony, because he was applying to work for the daughter whose career he'd dismissed. And a little bit of satisfaction, because life had just served him a very educational lesson about assumptions. His cover letter was particularly interesting. He wrote about his passion for operational efficiency and his desire to transition into a growing industry with future potential. He mentioned his extensive experience in process optimization and his ability to implement systems that improve productivity while maintaining quality standards. Nowhere in his application materials did he mention that his daughter owned a logistics company. As far as he knew, he was applying to some random Portland business that happened to need his skills. Should I schedule him for a phone screening? Jennifer asked, pretending not to notice my intense reaction to this particular resume. Absolutely, I said. Treat him exactly like any other candidate. If his qualifications match our needs, he moves forward in the process. The phone screening went well, according to Jennifer's notes. Dad was professional, knowledgeable, and genuinely interested in the logistics industry. He asked intelligent questions about our growth plans and operational challenges. He passed the first round and was invited for an in-person interview. I decided not to conduct his initial interview myself. Instead, Jennifer and our operations director, Marcus, who'd grown from my first employee into a key manager, would handle the first face-to-face meeting. The day of Dad's interview, I made sure to be out of the office. But Marcus texted me updates throughout the day. Professional presentation. Knows his stuff. Asking good questions about our medical division expansion. That evening, Marcus called with his assessment. Maya, your father doesn't know it's your company, does he? No, he doesn't. He's qualified for the position. Really qualified. And he seems genuinely excited about what we're building. He spent 20 minutes asking detailed questions about our customer service approach and why we focus on relationship building instead of just volume. What's your recommendation? Move him to the final round. But Maya, you're going to have to decide how to handle the revelation. He's going to figure it out when he meets with the CEO. That night, I called my mother to check on how Dad was feeling about his job prospects. "Oh, Maya, he's in such a better mood," she said. "He had an interview today with a logistics company, and it went really well. He's excited about the position, says it would let him use his engineering background in a new industry. The company sounds wonderful, very professional, growing rapidly." "That's great news, Mom. The funny thing is, the company name is Thompson Logistics. Same last name as ours. Your father jokes that it's a good omen." A good omen indeed. I hung up and stared at the ceiling of my bedroom, trying to decide how to handle the final interview. Part of me wanted to let him go through the entire process and offer him the job before revealing my identity. Another part wanted to walk into that boardroom and watch his face when he realized his daughter was about to interview him for a position at her company. The final interview was scheduled for Thursday morning at 10 a.m. I'd decided to handle it myself, but I wanted Dad to understand the company fully before learning who owned it. So I arranged for him to spend the morning touring our operation with Marcus, meeting key staff members, and seeing our technology systems in action. I watched from my office window as Dad arrived, wearing his best suit and carrying a leather portfolio. He looked nervous but determined, like a man who really needed this opportunity to work out. Marcus later told me that Dad was impressive during the tour. He asked technical questions about our routing software, suggested efficiency improvements for our dispatch system, and showed genuine interest in our company culture. When he met our drivers and administrative staff, he was respectful and engaged, treating everyone like valuable team members rather than subordinates. "He gets it," Marcus reported. "He understands that our success comes from treating employees well and building customer relationships." And Maya, he had no idea you were connected to the company. When someone mentioned the CEO was young and innovative, he just nodded and said he was looking forward to meeting leadership. At 11:30, David called Dad's phone to invite him to the executive conference room for his final interview. I was already seated at the head of the long table when David escorted him in. The look on my father's face was worth every difficult moment of the past 2 years. He stopped mid-stride in the doorway, his professional smile freezing as he processed what he was seeing. His daughter, dressed in a navy business suit, sitting in the CEO's chair of the company where he'd just spent 3 hours interviewing for a job he desperately needed. "Maya," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hello, Dad. Please, have a seat." He moved like a man in a dream, settling into the chair across from me while his eyes darted around the room, taking in the framed company awards on the walls, the strategic planning boards covered with expansion timelines, the executive conference table where he was now sitting as a job applicant, being interviewed by his daughter. "This is your company," he said, stating the obvious because sometimes the obvious needs to be said out loud. "Thompson Logistics, yes. I founded it 2.5 years ago. We're now one of Portland's fastest-growing logistics firms, with 86 employees and over 200 commercial clients." Dad looked down at his hands, then back at me. "You didn't tell me you were hiring. You didn't tell me you were looking for work in the logistics industry," I replied gently. Seems we both had some communication gaps. He was quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of the situation. His daughter, the one he'd called the family shame for delivering packages, was now in a position to offer him employment. The role reversal was complete and undeniable. "Maya, I don't know what to say." "Then let me talk first," I said, opening the portfolio in front of me. "I've reviewed your qualifications, and you're an excellent candidate for our senior operations consultant position. Your experience in process optimization and systems management is exactly what we need for our medical division expansion." My father sat across from me in the conference room where I'd negotiated million-dollar contracts, and for the first time in my adult life, I held all the power in our relationship. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt complicated. "Dad, before we discuss the position, I think we need to address what happened at Rachel's wedding." He winced at the memory. "Maya, I owe you an apology. I was wrong to say what I said. I was embarrassed, but that's no excuse for embarrassing you. You called my career choice the family shame," I said quietly. "Do you remember that?" "I remember." His voice was heavy with regret. "I was an idiot. I judged something I didn't understand, and I hurt you in the process." "Dad, you weren't just wrong about the job. You were wrong about the value of honest work, about what success looks like, and about your daughter's capabilities. This company was built on the foundation of that delivery job you were so ashamed of." He nodded, looking older than his 57 years. I see that now. Maya, what you've built here is remarkable. The employees I met today, they respect you. They're proud to work for Thomson Logistics. You've created something meaningful. I learned the business from the ground up, I continued. Every system we use, every process we've implemented, every client relationship we've built is based on understanding the work at its most fundamental level. The delivery job you thought was beneath me was actually my MBA in logistics management. For a moment, we sat in silence. Through the conference room windows, I could see our delivery vans departing for afternoon routes, each one representing jobs I'd created and families I was helping support. Dad, I want to offer you the senior operations consultant position. Not because you're my father, but because you're qualified for it. Your engineering background and process optimization experience are exactly what we need. The salary is competitive, the benefits are excellent, and you'd be working for a company that values experience and expertise. His eyes filled with tears he was trying hard not to shed. Maya, I don't know if I deserve this opportunity. This isn't about deserving, I said firmly. This is about whether you can do the job and whether you want to be part of what we're building here. But I need to know that you understand something. If you work for Thomson Logistics, you work for me. Not for your daughter who needs your guidance, but for your CEO who expects professionalism, dedication, and results. I understand, he said. And Maya, I'd be honored to work for you. Not just because you're my daughter, but because you've built something I respect. I slid the offer letter across the table. The position starts Monday. Your first project will be optimizing our medical courier protocols for the OHSU contract. It's complex, demanding work that requires someone with your systematic approach to problem solving. As he reviewed the offer, I added, Dad, there's one more thing. This company succeeds because we treat people with dignity, regardless of their position. Every employee here, from our newest driver to our senior managers, contributes to our success. I learned that lesson delivering packages in a yellow uniform. He looked up from the letter, and for the first time in years, I saw genuine pride in his eyes. Not pride in his own achievements, but pride in mine. When do I start? Dad's first day at Thomson Logistics was a Monday morning in November, exactly 3 years after I'd walked out of Rachel's wedding reception. I watched from my office window as he arrived early, carrying a coffee and wearing the kind of practical business attire appropriate for someone who might need to tour warehouses and delivery facilities. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of us. The man who'd once been embarrassed by his daughter's work uniform was now wearing ID badge and company polo shirt with Thomson Logistics embroidered on the chest. His first month was a revelation for both of us. Dad threw himself into optimizing our medical delivery protocols with the same intensity he'd once applied to criticizing my career choices. He developed routing algorithms that reduced delivery times by 15% and implemented quality control systems that impressed even our pickiest healthcare clients. More importantly, he approached the work with humility. He spent time riding with drivers to understand real-world delivery challenges. He listened to customer service concerns and incorporated feedback into his process improvements. He treated every employee with respect, remembering names and asking about their families. Your father's really something, Marcus told me one evening. He asked me to explain why we prioritize relationship building over pure efficiency. When I finished, he said he was learning more about business success from a former delivery driver than he'd learned in 20 years of corporate meetings. The transformation in our family dynamic was equally remarkable. Sunday dinners became occasions where Dad would update everyone on Thomson Logistics' growth and success. He'd brag about our client retention rates and employee satisfaction scores with the same pride he'd once reserved for Jake's engineering achievements. Maya's created something special, he told Uncle Mike at Thanksgiving. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies that could learn from her approach to customer service and employee relations. But the real moment of reckoning came during the company Christmas party. Dad had worked for us for 6 weeks by then, long enough to understand what we'd built and how we'd built it. During my annual address to employees, I looked out at the crowd and saw him standing with the operations team, applauding as I announced our record growth year. After the party, as we were cleaning up, Dad approached me. Maya, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you an acknowledgement. You were right about honest work, about building something from the ground up, about treating people with dignity regardless of their position. I was wrong about everything. Dad, you weren't wrong about everything. You were wrong about delivery work being shameful, but you were right about one thing. Pride doesn't pay bills. The difference is, I found pride in work that also paid bills. He smiled at that. Your mother says you're considering expanding to Seattle. We are. The medical courier market there is underserved, and we've got the systems in place to scale efficiently. Why? Because I'd like to help you build it, if you'll have me. Looking at my father, I realized that success isn't just about proving people wrong. Sometimes it's about giving them the opportunity to grow, to see differently, to become better versions of themselves. Dad didn't just need a job. He needed to understand the value of the work he'd dismissed and the daughter he'd underestimated. Thompson Logistics now operates in 3 cities, employs over 150 people, and generates 8-figure annual revenue. Dad runs our process optimization division and has become one of our most valuable senior staff members. But more than that, he's become a father I'm proud to work with and a man who understands that there's dignity in every honest day's work. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about family, redemption, and the surprising ways life teaches us about respect and humility. Sometimes the greatest success comes not from proving we're right, but from giving others the chance to discover they were wrong.